We will start with our meeting. Patty, roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Bettenker,
Present.
Member Connors,
Present.
Member DeSimone,
Present.
Executive Director Miguel Nunez,
Present.
Legal Counsel Jamie Parchio. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. And we will approve the minutes from May 7th. Do we have a motion to approve?
I will move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll be recusing from that since I was not here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the second, though.
I appreciate that. And so the second item is to discuss and vote upon campaign finance and election legislation submitted. You want to walk us through it, Director?
Sure. We have 5 pieces of legislation before you, which you should have copies of each. The first piece of legislation to discuss is Senate Bill 3057, introduced by Senator Dawn Oyer. This bill is similar to the bill that was supported by the board earlier this year. However, this bill and the next bill are split bills from that one piece of legislation in the House that the board supported. So it appears that the Senate has split the bill, meaning that the portion that handles moving the primary is contained in Senate Bill 3057, which is this bill. The other portion handles the other bill, which we'll talk about next, is going to make the changes on the nomination papers that were contained in House Bill 7664. So essentially, House Bill 7664 was reintroduced as a sub-A. There was a sub-A presented, which strips out the moving of the primary date and only leaves the changes to the nomination paper process. And so currently, Senate Bill 3057 has not gone before the Senate committee, but the Senate Bill 3058, which we will cover next, has gone before. Is scheduled, has actually been approved by the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they are also hearing the House version of 7664A, which mirrors 3058. So we did look through that next bill, Senate Bill 3058, which does contain the nomination changes, and that does mirror, for the most part, it mirrors the House sub-A, and it does follow closely with the regulations that the board is establishing, which will be covered at the 2:00 meeting. But essentially, the difference between these two bills, Senate Bill 3057 and 3058, is essentially it's a split version of the House of the House bill, the original House bill. But the sub-A House bill is actually a mirror of that 3058. So essentially, the changes to the nomination process would occur if these two bills, if this Senate Bill 3058 passes, as well as House Bill 7664A. However, the moving the primary would not. Now, one thing I will note as a change and I will move on to, do you want to vote on these individually, or I think, right? So
Yeah, I think we've done it that way.
so before I get into the very minor details about the second bill, Senate Bill 3057, essentially what it is a bill to move the primary up to the final Tuesday in August. That's essentially what it does. And Rob Rock from Secretary of State's office and Kathy Placencia are here in case these are Secretary of State bills as well, the Senate versions. They are here to answer any questions about the splitting of the bill and any of the proposed changes in them. And the staff did support Senate Bill 3057 because it does, the staff supported it earlier this year, and it does the same thing. However, the only changes is that they're into 2 different bills now.
Can I just ask a question? So 7664A is being heard in the Senate when? This
Tonight.
week? Today, okay.
Yes.
All right. And then 3058 has already been voted out of committee?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Miguel?
I just have a quick question. Since they split them, does the House have a mirror version of Senate 3057 or no?
Not to my knowledge, they do
Okay.
not, no.
All right.
Is that correct, Rob? No mirror of 3057, right? Moving the primary date? Yes.
Okay. And then the original bill, House 7664, did the board support that? Do you
Yes.
remember? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does anyone have any motions or any comments?
I'll move support of Senate 3057.
Any seconds? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
So just to follow up on the second bill, Senate Bill 3058, which the staff does support because it essentially mirrors our proposed regulation on nomination papers. It does not increase the number of days. For some reason, they did not retain either in the House Sub A or in the Senate version, increasing the number of days from 2 for objections to be heard by the Board of Elections to be decided upon for general election candidates. Because as we know, this all happens in July. The ballots for November are still a ways off to be printed. So we essentially have a lot more time to deal with objections for candidates who are independent candidates, for example, because they will not be on the primary ballot. We did like that aspect of the original bill where it did give us that 30 days. That was part of the secretary's original bill. So this would still require the objections to be rendered within 2 days, the decisions to be rendered on objections within 2 days, regardless if they have they're in the primary or they're in the general election. So we do have, but the staff still supports the bill because it does introduce significant changes to the nomination paper process. And our regulation is already based on us having the 2 days regardless. So we're moving into it as if we had only the 2 days, but the extra days would have been nice.
Any questions or motions?
I have a couple of questions if I can. In looking at on page 2, it speaks to the copy being an exact replica. So is that going to be reviewed by the local board or by the secretary? How is that going to be handled to determine that it is in fact a replica of the nomination papers? Like what do we see as how that's going to work?
This is under 171410 or page 2 of the bill of
Page
3058.
2, the end of paragraph B. Just as a practical
Yeah,
matter. I'm just
Rob
trying
can
see
speak
how,
to that.
what we
That's a
envision for
change that they've implemented. They're trying to implement.
So Commissioner, we asked for this as part of the bill because often now candidates will come in and they want to request hundreds of pages of nomination papers, and we just don't have the resources to do it. So the current law says that they've got to if they want to make copies, they can do it on their own behalf, but they've got to bring it to our office. We've got to timestamp every copy and send it back. And that was written before, or when we had a central voter registration system where local boards had to hand type with the typewriter the nomination papers. So now that we have high-speed printers, we're putting it in the hands of the local board saying that the hands of the candidates to say that if you make copies of nomination papers, they have to be an exact match. And when you turn them in, if they're not, you're running the risk of not having your signatures be counted.
So if it's a nomination paper that's turned into your office, your staff would review it to make sure it's a duplicate.
Yeah, so the first crack will be the local boards. They get all the nomination papers. So the state and federal ones then get transferred to us by the local boards once they review it. So we usually take whatever the local boards say. So really the local boards would decide if the nomination papers are not up to par, the copies.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I'd feel a little more comfortable if there was another check, but I certainly I'm not going to say I'm not going to support the legislation over that, but I'd feel more comfortable if there was a secondary check on the local boards. We've had the issue in the past where we had to do similar to what happened with the number of candidates, and we had one clerk submit, a candidate who didn't have the signatures, and I get a little concerned when that's sort of the last stop.
Yeah, and I think the other check would be the challenge period. So if a candidate wanted to challenge his or her opponent's papers because they're not legit, that's one way of doing it as well. But our office, because we give out the nomination papers for federal and statewide candidates, the local boards give them out for all other candidates, and we provide what we believe to be sufficient number of nomination papers to begin with. I think we give statewide candidates 200 copies, which fits about
Oh, okay.
10,000 signatures. The candidates just like to make more because of the way they campaign. So we believe that both us and the local boards provide enough nomination papers where they can get the requisite number of signatures already.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have another question, Madam Chair. And if we move to page 3, and it's about 3 paragraphs up from the bottom, subsection C. The consistent pattern of forgery that we're listing in this statute and in the reg, again, how do we envision that as a consistent pattern of forgery? And how would the local board arrive at that? I mean, what do we foresee as how this is going to be implemented?
Our intent when we wrote the bill was to give the local boards the ability to, if they see something, they should say something. And then when it gets turned over to the executive director and the board would review it and determine if this was a, widespread issue. We certainly, the intent is to not treat every invalid signature as fraudulent. I mean, the cities and towns throw out signatures all the time because they don't match. And that's not because of forgery. That's just because people sign them quickly. So our intent was for the local boards, if they see something that's a pattern, if they see multiple deceased voters with signatures or the same handwriting on a number of signatures, that they would notify the board. It wouldn't be on every individual signature because that would be onerous for everybody.
And then, so just to follow up on that, on the next page, subparagraph 3, we talk about suspected forged signatures. So it's different language. So it's different language for us, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So
So for the state board, I'm on subparagraph 3 on page 4, top of the page. Second paragraph from the top. It starts with the state board shall explicitly determine, deliver, and in writing mail the Secretary of State findings of its review. So in our review, the standard is a little bit different. It's suspected forged signatures.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's my only question.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Do we have a motion for 3058?
I'll move support.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next piece of legislation is 3059. Again, this was 3059 is the next piece of legislation. This proposal was submitted by the Department of State due to a federal law change. And I'll let Rob, if you want to explain the reasoning behind this one, and that's going to be repeated for the final bill on the agenda as well.
Yeah, so Congress a few years ago passed the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act, which essentially puts guardrails on the process of sending the presidential electoral votes from the states to Congress. And it had a number of changes in it, and our state law adheres to all of them with the exception of one. Currently, our state law says that the Electoral College ceremony is on the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December. The federal law was changed to be the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December. So while we believe that federal law trumps state law, and we would obviously hold the Electoral College ceremony when the federal government tells us to, we want to avoid any sort of reason for someone to say that our Electoral College ceremony is invalid because it doesn't meet state law. So we're just asking the General Assembly to make that one minor change from Monday to Tuesday so we can be in perfect alignment with federal legislation.
Can I ask a question? I should have checked. Where are both of these bills, the House and the Senate? Have they been heard yet?
Yes, so the Senate committee has heard the bill and held it for further study. We're hoping that it's going to be passed, and the House has passed the bill out of committee.
Okay.
So we're just waiting to ensure that this happens, and obviously, as we're winding down the session, we're monitoring that to hopefully push that across the finish line.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No questions.
Do we have a motion for 3059?
I'll move to support.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The next bill is House Bill 8225. This act would prohibit driver privilege cards and state identification cards from containing any barcodes on the card that can be scanned or used for voting purposes. Because this is certainly a policy decision by the state in terms of what to include and what not to include on driver's licenses, which is not privy to the Board of Elections. The staff doesn't have a specific position on this. However, as some background about how driver's licenses are used at the polling place, essentially, it's essentially a shortcut for a voter to check in at the polling place. They have to provide one of 8 identifications, and the driver's license has the benefit of having that barcode on the back, which our electronic poll books are actually encoded to scan, meaning that it just takes their name, first name, last name, date of birth, and matches it to the closest record on file within the voter list. And there is no, there obviously is no, that's not proving citizenship. It's simply proving who you are at the polling place. So having the driver's license does not prove your citizenship. And in our experience, based on our discussions with the Department of Motor Vehicles over the years, we know that there are currently driver's license holders, even before the driver's privilege card, that hold driver's license that are not citizens. You could be a legal permanent resident, you could be here on a legal visa, such as a student visa or a work visa, and you could have been issued a driver's license, which looks exactly the same as everyone else's driver's license. However, you are not allowed to vote. You're not. It's required that you be a U.S. citizen to vote. So although you hold that driver's license, that does not mean that you can register and show up at the polls to vote. So this falls in line with the similar situation with those particular license holders. Now, the only concern that the staff would have about it is if there is a change to that barcode in any way, which would impact every voter that has a driver's license. We would want to know what those changes are, because they could potentially impact scanning of the driver's license. So if a change is made to these driver's licenses, we don't know if it's going to change everyone's driver's license, which would mean our electronic poll books would need to be tested. Obviously, this is going forward when these would be issued going forward, but it would just have to be determined that that would in any way impact everyone's ability to check in at the electronic poll books at the polling place. So from our perspective, that is our only concern, is that those barcodes, if they are changed, they are compatible with our system, because we know that that does improve efficiency at the polling place, being able to scan those driver's licenses. So we would be cautious about making any changes, particularly close to the election.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Does anyone have a motion for this?
Well, I'll move support of House.
To support it?
I'll move to support it. Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important that there's a designation. I'm not as concerned with what would be done. This is going forward, correct?
This
No, this
is,
would be for right now.
this would be, I don't believe there is a implementation period in the bill. I think it's immediate upon passage.
Right, but it's going forward on new issuances and licenses.
Yes, correct.
They're not going to call back all the old licenses. We're not asking for that. So I'd move to support.
Okay. Any second?
I just have a question if I could. So what other protections are there to prevent non-citizens from registering to vote? I know we recently had a case where someone chose to take their name out of the voter registration system, where they had registered to vote accidentally. So are there other protections that would prevent that?
So currently, we're required for first-time registrants in the state to do a check against their driver's license number or their last 4 digits of their social security number with the Social Security Administration. And if those validate, then that person is cleared from having to present any sort of additional identification requirements at the polling place. If they don't, then they do have under federal law a longer list of identification that they can present. But because of, and to my knowledge and over the years of experience, because there is no way to authenticate reliably whether someone's citizenship status is, what their citizenship status is, there's a time lag between, for example, what the DMV knows about someone's citizenship status to what their actual person's status is. For example, if you go and renew your driver's license and it doesn't have to be renewed until 2029, let's say. You renew it now, it's good for 5 years. And next month you become a United States citizen. If you don't go to the DMV and actually bring them your certificate of naturalization, they're going to have on record that you're here as a legal permanent resident, not a U.S. citizen. So that flag within the Department of Motor Vehicle system will be out of date for potentially up to 5 years. Because you could certainly register to vote as a citizen. You probably registered at the oath ceremony. But that does not mean that the DMV is going to have that updated information. So because that information is not reliable and there are certain federal statutes involved, that's not a particular requirement that we're allowed to verify to past a certain extent. And when you register online or on the paper form, you do have to certify that you are a United States, you're a resident of the state of Rhode Island, you're a United States citizen, and that you're of 16 years of age or older to register to vote.
And do you feel that I mean, since I've been here, I've only seen the one case that we had to deal with. Do you think that there's a widespread or even any kind of issue with having non-citizens on their voter rolls? Have you seen anything like that?
Not in my experience. In most of the cases that I've seen have happened inadvertently. And the person could have checked off they actually could have checked off no on the form and it was still processed by clerical error by the boards of canvassers, for example. Or they just might not understand exactly what they're filling out. And in that case, they've usually retracted that as soon as it's been discovered.
I have another question. So are you saying at this point, for example, if I become a naturalized citizen, that doesn't automatically change at the registry of motor vehicles?
No, you would have to
to-
go
There's
there.
no mechanism that does that?
No.
Sadly, there isn't.
Based on that, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Yeah, because and that's part of, I think that's a larger part of the systems that need to be fixed within
Yeah.
the
Based on that, I mean,
departments.
we can't rely on their system, so I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Yeah, and I think, to answer your question, there's like nationwide reports that show that it happens very, very little, and most of the time, if anything, it's because of a mistake. It's a federal crime, and if people do that, they cannot become citizens. So it's a really big deal when
Yeah,
it happens.
I didn't realize it was incumbent upon the person to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
down
So
to,
when
back down to the
like my
registry.
parents had to
I'm
go
guessing a lot of
vote,
people
yeah.
won't go.
My parents had to go
Right.
I
register
mean, if
to
they
vote.
have a license that says it expires in 3 years,
Correct.
they're not going to go.
Correct, exactly.
So,
Yeah, you have
okay.
to
Yeah, I
go to
didn't
the
realize
Secretary
that.
of State's office and register that way. It won't do it automatically for you.
I thought the federal government changed everything for you.
Wouldn't it be nice? All right, so do
Should
we
be
have
one of the perks, no?
do we have a different motion?
I mean, I'll leave it to the board whether you want to just let this go without support or
No.
how you want to handle it. You want to just bring it to the
Yeah.
full committee?
That would be my preference, just let it go with no support.
Me too.
So is the choice no position?
No
So
So
we'll take no position.
No position?
I'll move to take no position.
I'll
Is
second.
that okay?
Yep, yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
perfect.
Oh, Marcelo, thank you. I didn't realize that.
Oh, happy to.
I learned something today.
Oh, yay. Close the
Um,
meeting then.
That's it. I'm done.
And the final bill is House Bill 8304, which is the same as the Senate Bill 3059, which the board just a few minutes ago voted to support. It's identical.
Do we have a motion for 8304?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. And that, the next item is to discuss suspending the committee. And I know that we talked about after session, which will be in a couple of weeks, we would like to come back and see what bills passed and what didn't. That's okay? So we
We're
won't
going
suspend
to
it.
wait till it
Yep.
closes, right? Of
Yes,
the
perfect.
legislative session.
Yep.
Great. So
Hopefully
we
we
don't,
soon.
have to do anything
Correct.
then? Okay,
Yes.
great.
All right. Do we have a motion to end the subcommittee meeting?
Motion to adjourn the subcommittee.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. We went a little over.
Sorry, that was my fault.